Sideways. Yeah. All right, ready? We'll call the special meeting of the Minot City Council to order for today, July the 12th. I just ask that once again everybody turn off their their electronic devices, cell phones, anything else that might interrupt the meeting for today. I do want to mention that we do have at least one alderman, if not two, on the phone. So when we do roll call, we'll ask for that verification as well. So, Kelly, roll call, please.
Janser.
Here.
Olson. Here. Pittner.
Here.
Straight.
Here.
Wolski.
Here.
Sitma.
Here. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag
of
the United States of America
and to the republic
and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice
with liberty
for all.
and justice for all.
We have a fairly short agenda for a council meeting this afternoon. We're here today to consider the four candidates who have stepped forward to consider the appointment to fulfill the remaining term for alderman that was vacated by me when I was elected mayor earlier in June. That term does expire in June of 2020. I first want to take the opportunity to thank the four different candidates that did reach out and submitted paperwork for appointment. You know, I felt it was important for the process to first have the potential candidates take that first step forward, and that certainly was a sign of commitment in just getting the reaching out portion taken care of, because in essence that is very much the same way that going out and getting petitions. It is a first step forward. There are four candidates that did request appointment, and they are Dr. Stephen Padragula, David Chimento, Mitch Kraft, and Zoda Morgan Jr. I understand that Mr. Chimento couldn't be here this afternoon due to some prior engagements that he is out of town. And at this time, I would ask that we have the candidates come up to the podium one at a time here, and I'll call out each one of them to say a few words, make your case, your own little resume, so to speak, for your goals and for your ideas for council to be considered for the candidate. And just following our agenda here today, we'll start with Dr. Stephen Padragula.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the Council. As you well know, I'm Steve Padragula. I served as one of your fellow aldermen until about 2 weeks ago. And I've submitted a detailed statement supporting my candidacy to be appointed to the Council. For the benefit of the audience and those in internet land and TV land, I just wanted to briefly summarize my credentials. First, I'm able to be immediately effective on the Council. I served for 2 years until about 2 weeks ago. I can hit the ground running immediately, today, this afternoon. Second, I would argue that voter preference is important. I received 2,880 votes, more than any other candidate for mayor, for alderman, or for judge, except for those who were actually elected. Three, I've been subjected to rigorous vetting. This was my third campaign in 3 years. I knocked on over 20,000 doors. I spoke with several thousand people. I attended numerous candidate forums. I think my views, my philosophy of government are very well known to people. Fourth, I've had extensive experience on the council. I served 8 years of that representing the 3rd Ward. I served an additional 1-year term representing the 3rd Ward. I served a year term at large. So I have extensive experience on the council. I also have an extensive time away from the council, and I think that's very important to have a good sense of perspective. I served last until 2008. I was off the council for 6-8 years, and then I was back on for those 2 years. Next point I would make is I have extensive knowledge of city governments. I've had systematic orientations to 18 city departments, ranging from a morning or afternoon where I shadowed people, sat in on meetings, went with city staff performing their duties, all the way to a 24-hour shift with the firefighters. So I'm intimately aware of what city government is like, what our staff is like, what our equipment is like, what our buildings are like, what our programs are like. I also have significant leadership at the city, county, regional, state, and national levels. And I think that's important, again, for a sense of perspective and to be able to deal with different points of view. I'm a clinical psychologist. I have 40 years of experience helping people solve their problems and function more effectively. And Minot is facing some problems now. And I think I can apply those clinical skills to helping the council and the city work more effectively. And I think it starts with listening. Listening to people, paying attention to what they say, helping them realize that they do have a voice in the city and their feelings and opinions will be taken into account. I also have some entrepreneurial and business experience. After a few years working for the civil service, I started out my own business, my own private practice in 1989, and I've been working full-time ever since. I know what it's like to be a small businessman. I know what it's like to balance a payroll. I know what it's like to hire and let go people and service. As a forensic psychologist, I testify a lot in court, and I've been relied on as an expert witness in over 1,700 cases by judges and juries. And I think I have the integrity, the trustworthiness that a public official needs. I also have the analytical skills, the reasoning abilities that I think need to be applied to trying to resolve our problems and understanding all of the information we have, particularly as presented by our new city manager. I have a doctorate, an earned doctorate, and have conducted research. I also have a long-term commitment to openness in government, to effectiveness, to accountability. Back when I ran, I think in around 1998, 1999, the Minot Daily News editorialized that I showed, quote, proven willingness to ask the tough questions, close quote. And I think we still have some tough questions to ask, and the answers may be even tougher. The Minot Daily also said when we had a council of 14 members plus a mayor that, quote, he might very well be the hardest working council member, close quote. And that's a positive improvement that's happened with the downsized council. I see more aldermen working much harder than they used to. But I think I still should get some credit for having been on the previous council and working hard there. So for all of those reasons, I would ask to be appointed to council for a 2-year term. I would have wished a 4-year term, but I congratulate Mr. Pittner. He got elected. But I believe I have a lot to offer the city and the council and would ask to be appointed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Padragula. Mr. Mitch Kraft.
I am definitely not one that can stand up here and toot my own horn. I applied for this position because I feel more people need to step up and take an active role in what's going on in our community. My question to you would be, rather than me tell you a bunch about myself, what questions do you have from me? Starting with Mr. Sitma.
When it comes to some of the challenges ahead, how can you get yourself prepared for the instant role that you would play in terms of a decision maker with all of the many different faceted obstacles and opportunities that we had? It's a heck of a catch-up game.
That would be almost an impossible feat without your help to get caught up that quickly. I do not have all the answers. Wouldn't expect that. I'm a citizen of the town that would do my best to take the information in front of me and give what I felt would be the right decision.
Mr. Walski.
Mayor Sitma, thank you. Mr. Kraft, I'll echo the mayor's early comments, and I'm greatly appreciative for you stepping forward and seeking this position. My question is we have just completed a campaign and election process. It was about 3 months ago that there was the standard public expression of interest through a petition process. Why today versus 3 months ago before the election?
I thought about it before the election. On the school board side of things, when it came time to do the paperwork and take the first steps to do the election side of it, I did not do that on the time aspect of it. I wasn't quite ready. I regret not doing that. Thinking about that after the fact, I should have ran. That would have been fun. I would have enjoyed that experience had I not been voted in. That is why I didn't do it then. But thinking of it in the hindsight, doing it this way now is why I gave my application now.
Alderman Olson.
Are you currently serving on the Minot Public School Board?
Yes,
How long is your term there?
2 more years.
Okay,
I'm
and-
halfway through. This is the start of the 3rd year.
So if you were appointed, you would continue to serve on the school board as well as on the city council?
That is correct.
Do you have any concerns about balancing time, commitment?
I'm up at 6, I go to bed at 12.
Okay.
The phone doesn't quit working, the emails don't quit working. I do all of that at the same time as my job and my family and 2 daughters in the public school system who are busy as can be. As part of the city council, being out in public is one of the things that I'm in public all day, start to finish, until I go to bed. That would not stop.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Kraft, I think I have one other question, and that tends to fall into an area that sometimes may be overlooked is a person almost has to have a very, very flexible schedule to fit in all of the different committee meetings, as I think a lot of the aldermen find that the time is becoming more and more precious as more issues come up. And certainly between just our regular duties and meeting with the public, is that something within your working paradigm that is available and optional for you?
One of the things that I did was talk to our regional supervisor and my boss to make sure that this was okay with them. I run a company, Prairie Supply. I have 2 phenomenal employees that work for me that will cover me in the absence of work to be here.
Any further questions for Mr. Kraft? Mr. Kraft, do you have any closing statements or anything further to say?
No, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Kraft. And finally, we have Mr. Morgan with us tonight.
How's it going? I graduated in '99 from Minot, so I've seen all the changes in Minot. Moved away for 9 years. Then was down in Texas, helped them out on the city area with some changes. And I mean, I'd like to bring it to Minot because I've seen their changes. And I've been to Grand Forks, seen how hard the flood wall was there to change. And I mean, I'm ready to hit the ground running with changes and learning the whole situation. If you guys got questions, I'll answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Morgan? Alderman Walski.
Mr. Morgan, once again, thank you very much for stepping forward. I greatly appreciate people who are willing to step into this role, and this is going to be a challenging job for a little while, and particularly over the next few months. My question for you is the same one I had for Mr. Kraft. We have just been through a election process, a very public campaign. Why the expression of interest today and not 3 months ago?
3 months ago, I was getting ready for my shoulder surgery, so I was just trying to take time to let that heal up. Now it's healing up. So I was like, okay, I wanted to do it 3 months ago. I'm going to go for it now.
Alderman Olson.
I would roll my question and the mayor's question into one then as well. There's a huge time commitment to being on the council. So do you have the flexibility within your work schedule and life schedule to allow for serving on the council?
Yep, I run my own detail business here in Minot, and it's only me and my wife running it. So I pretty much schedule my appointments around all my other appointments.
All right, thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Morgan from the council?
Mr. Mayor?
I believe that is Mr. Straight.
Yes,
Alderman
sir.
Straight.
I guess I would be curious to know of the Mr. Kraft and the other candidate who just spoke, if they could touch on a little bit of their feelings on the state of the city budget.
Okay, so for maybe some of the folks that out in the audience or on YouTube that didn't quite hear that, Alderman Straight asked for the candidates for both Mr. Morgan and Mr. Kraft on, give your perspective on the state of the city budget. Mr. Alderman Straight, do I have that correct?
Correct, sir.
All right.
Pretty much, to me, I would have to look at it and see what it is and pretty much figure out, and with your guys' help, with the budget. I mean, every city has a different budget, so it's hard to go off of not seeing it.
Thank you. And maybe Mr. Kraft come up and don't go too far here in case we have some more questions there, Mr. Morgan. Mr. Kraft, same question. Kind of give your overview of the state of the city budget and your thoughts and opinion on it.
I think that the city does a decent job with their budget today with what they have to work with. It will definitely be a challenge to do less with more without raising our taxes. to finding a balance between what we can afford and what we need versus what we want. Does that kind of answer your question, Mr. Straight?
Yep, appreciate it.
Any further questions for either three candidates from the Alderman? Oh, Alderman Walski.
Mayor Sitma, thanks. I think I'd appreciate hearing from Mr. Padragula regarding the budget as well.
Wow. I think, as the other candidate mentioned, there are going to be some tough choices. I see some positive change, though, and this is where my historical perspective comes in. When I first served on the council in 1998, we had nowhere near the amount of time to examine the options. We didn't have the kind of information the city manager is giving us now. And perhaps most importantly, we didn't have the forecasting, the predictions in terms of where the income is. I see a much more process. I don't think anybody wants to taxes. The starting point where we have services left. I think we can do some fine tuning, additional things, travel restrictions and stuff like that. On borrowed time and income, we've been using the sales property tax, and unfortunately, last property tax went up. There was, and I think one of the things we need to learn as a city is to be honest, live beyond our means, and to be for bonding and things like that. The city manager will come up with further savings. The council will have the courage to stick fair and budget and the current level of revenue production. I think there are things we can do, but the reality again is we have been living in a situation that just wasn't sustainable, and it's reality. It may not be very pleasant to face it, but we have to face it. And I think this is what we're in now, a readjustment. So I look forward to either on the council or off. The city staff will do their best to keep the expenses as low as possible, but I think those in charge of the city in terms of leadership positions have to show that leadership and not keep kicking the can down the road.
Thank you, Dr. Padragula. Any further questions? And I do want to recognize Mr. Morgan. You didn't have an opportunity for any final comments, so if you have any final comments, by all means, I welcome you to make them. Okay. Any final questions from Alderman Olson?
Did Mr. Schimento provide any information? I know that we did get a copy of his letter. Was there anything else that he wanted shared this afternoon?
Not to my knowledge. What we had got from his email was, okay, I think, distributed to all of the aldermen.
Yes.
All right. And that was, I was going to make that mention here as we were heading towards a recommendation. Last chance for questions, last chance for, okay. So again, I want to thank every candidate for stepping forward, every person that gave it thought to stepping into public service. This is probably one of the bigger steps a person can make, going from a citizen, somebody who votes, somebody who gets involved with their community, to stepping into a leadership role. This is far from an easy decision, I think, for anyone, and certainly takes a tremendous amount of time to get to that thought process as well. We have had 3 elections in 3 years. We've had a substantial public vetting process to this point. I feel the nomination of appointment is appropriate rather than waiting until November for a special election, and I did want to make that point here tonight, which is why we are now looking at a recommendation of appointment. Each candidate here tonight does offer some potentially different viewpoints than perhaps the aldermen that are sitting up here or on the phone, to which I think is a good thing. Diversity among a leadership board is a good thing. The commitment to serve requires a substantial amount of time and dedication. I think we've all recognized that. And of course, that does involve more than just the public meetings, but as far as responding and the interactions with the public on a day-to-day basis as an alderman. With all of that in mind tonight, my recommendation of appointment to the council is Dr. Stephen Padragula to fill my vacancy. At as the top recipient of the vote cast out of any candidate running for the city election position who was not elected, Dr. Padragula not only collected the signatures to get on the ballot, but campaigned and stood before the public on his platform and talked about his ideas. And I think that's an important part of the process, and not to diminish any of the other candidates who stepped forward and said, I can be a leader. And I certainly welcome the other candidates to come back and petition and run again. I think it's an important part of the process, which again is why my recommendation goes to Dr. Stephen Padragula tonight. Alderman Walski.
Mayor, set my thanks to, I appreciate your comments. Is this something we need a motion from the council to? Once again, I appreciate your comments. I appreciate all the candidates stepping forward. I've had a lot of public input on this over the last couple weeks. But from my perspective, the input that matters most is that which was offered a month ago at our election. And to that end, I would support your recommendation, Mr. Mayor, and I would move that we appoint Dr. Padragula to the remainder of the 2-year term that will be